December 7th, 2005. Item number 110. Today's guest is Michael with the Commoner's View of the World podcast and the Teen Podcaster Network.
Podcast411.com. Listen different.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Rob, and this is the Podcast 411 podcast. Before we get into the interview with Michael, a couple quick news and notes. As always, our call-in number is 206-666-4357. That's 206-666-HELP. Or you can send in audio comments to podcast411@gmail.com. This Saturday, December 10th, at Tom Fuller's on the Plaza, will be the Kansas City Podcasters Meetup from 4 to 6 p.m. So anyone in the Kansas City area, we look forward to seeing you then. And talking about podcasters meeting up, there is the Podcaster Con that will be in January, on January 7th at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. Look forward to anyone in that area, or anyone else for that matter, coming out to the Podcaster Con. I'll be running a seminar called the 411 on how to podcast. Murr from Geek Fu Action Grip will have a seminar on women in podcasting, and there are a few other seminars. Go to podcastercon.org, check out what we'll have at the show. You can also find a link to that on the front page of podcast411.com. And in case I haven't mentioned it before, this podcaster convention is completely free to attend. There is no fees to sign up, and this is a non-commercial event, so this is all about podcasters. Well, at this point, I wanted to put together some fun sound effects, a gunshot going off, and then the music from Beverly Hills Cop, you know, the one the heat is on type music, but then I remembered that is not pod safe, so I can't do that, so that would just ruin the whole bit. And then finally, I was going to have an old guy yelling, "There's gold in them there hills." For those of you in the know, you already understand what I'm talking about. For those that you don't, let me fill you in. This past week, Pod Show started sending out some more invites to people to join the Pod Show network. So there is going to be a nice little bit on this, and Scott Fletcher will have commentary on this in the next PodCheck review. So make sure you check out podcheck.com. It should be his December 7th show or December 8th show, depending on when his wife lets him get it done. Okay, today we have a tech tip sent in from Kevin Pratt and Cade Hutchinson, hosts of Alien Ethos, The Ethics of Sci-Fi, and this tech tip is on double enders. Here we go.
Hi Rob, this is Cade.
And this is Kevin. We're here to talk to you about double ending. No, we don't mean that. We mean a cool way to record your podcast.
Oh, but that's right. I'm in Tempe, Arizona, and Kevin's all the way across the country in Atlanta, Georgia. So we're using Skype to talk, but we're recording our audio locally to our own computers.
Then he sends his recorded file to me, and I put the two sides together into a single file so that you out there in podcasting land can enjoy our witty comments.
There's more than one way to shave a yak, though. All you need are 3 parts: a way to record, a way to communicate with each other, and a way to combine the audio.
We'll tell you how we do it when we record our show, Alien Ethos, The Ethics of Sci-Fi.
The moral dissection of your favorite sci-fi TV shows, movies, books, and comics.
We're not recording the show. You don't have to do that.
But it's fun.
Anyway, on our Macs, we use Rogue Amoeba's Audio Hijack Pro to record, Skype to communicate, and Apple Logic Express to edit.
First, let's look at recording. We choose audio device as our hijack. Then, while we have a setup that's a bit more complicated, you can just use your computer's built-in mic as the audio in, and the headphones as audio out.
Next, you set your recording settings. We use the Apple lossless format to save space but get the highest quality recording possible.
Then, we set up Skype's audio settings the same way we did in Audio Hijack Pro. Once we've established a call, we both press the record button in Audio Hijack.
Once we're done recording, Cade sends me his audio file. You can do this however you'd like, but the idea is to get both files onto a single computer so that someone can spend hours slaving over a hot stove. Editing the files together.
Then, as we say in the French, voila! You have a high-quality podcast that
Transcends space and time.
That's right, you just heard it from the king of the universe. You too can use this technique to start a new show with a faraway friend, or even do interviews with guests.
For more...
Sorry about that. For more information, check out the forums here on Podcast 411 or go to podcastingwiki.org.
Kevin and Cade, thank you so much for putting together that great tech tip on double enders, and also for putting together a great wiki article on the double ender. I will have links in the show notes to the double ender article in the wiki page, and also links, of course, to the Alien Ethos podcast. We're going to go ahead now and get into our interview with Michael from the Commodore's View of the World podcast and also from the Teen Podcaster Network. Here we go. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
And I'll start you out with the first question. And what was your first computer?
It's the one I'm using right now. It's a Dell, and it's pretty crappy.
What was the first podcast you listened to?
It was one of the commercial ones that iTunes wanted us to listen to when they first came out. I'm not sure which one it was, though.
What podcasts are you listening to now on a more regular basis?
I listen to The Landing Pad, The Shuby Show, The Web 2.0 Show. I listen to a lot of indie ones. I'm not so big on the mainstream ones. I just listen to a lot of the Teen Podcasters Network ones, and mostly those, and then some tech shows and some other ones. I change a lot, so. There's one that I really like, though, called the Ipod Interviews, but they haven't done that for like 3 months, so.
What was that one about?
The guy who does it has a passion for interviewing, and just like yourself. So basically, if he finds somebody who's worth interviewing, he interviews them and then uploads it as a podcast.
Let's talk a little bit about your podcast. Can you tell the listeners what your podcast is about?
My podcast is The Commodore's View of the World. It's located at commodorecast.blogspot.com. And pretty much, I relate philosophy to my life and what's going on with a teenager, and sort of relate modern-day issues to anything that a teenager or a regular person might experience. So,
what are some of the things you've talked about on some recent shows?
Last episode, I talked about freedom of speech and why it's good, but that everyone needs to have a line in their head where it's not perfectly acceptable to say something. So basically how freedom of speech needs to have limits within themselves, not legally, but mentally.
What was it that made you want to do a podcast? What got you interested in podcasting?
I had just experienced some podcasts with iTunes, and I was like, oh man, I gotta jump on the bandwagon here. As teens so often do, I was, jumping on the bandwagon once it really came out big.
Now, you've become involved with the Teen Podcaster Network. Can you explain what your role is with them and something about the Teen Podcaster Network? Explain what it is.
I founded the Teen Podcasters Network. That was July 28th, I believe. It's located at teenpodcasters.com, and basically it's a directory for teens who podcast, and we have very little lines or restrictions. It's pretty much basically a directory for teens, and it's become a community, and we can get services. Like, we have free Libsyn hosting right now, because they're an affiliate of ours. So we get good stuff out of it.
How many members do you currently have?
Between 40 and 50. Sometimes we drop people, sometimes we gain people, so it's always, currently, I don't think it's ever been above 50, so.
Other than obviously being a teenager, what are some of the other requirements if you want to join the Teen Podcaster Network?
You have to link to us in some way or form. You have to mention us on your show, once every couple of shows. You also have to not be offensive. We don't mind if you're explicit, but if you're offensive to another member of the network or, to a general group or population, then we won't accept you. And you also have to be in the podcast pickle directory because they list us as a group on their site. So it's pretty easy requirements to fulfill.
What is the goal of the Teen Podcaster Network?
We really want to become, more than just a directory, and become a community, and really just get more than being just a directory, and to find people who are similar to yourself and become friends with them. So,
what are some of the advantages if someone comes and they join your network? What's some of the advantages they'll get for joining the TPN?
They'll get links to their site, at the very least. Everyone links back to the network, which in turn links to them, and that's free press. And they also get, if they would like it, free liberated syndication hosting. And we have free album art for them, and we're getting affiliates frequently, and we just have a lot of tools and offerings on our site that are nice for if you are a member.
What's some of the more interesting feedback you've received since you've been doing your podcast?
Interesting, I would say, people have asked me to comment on issues that are coming up in politics. Recently, I was asked to comment on abortion, and I'm going to talk about this upcoming show. I get a lot of good comments and some bad. Don't play the bad ones unless they have opinions. If they state something that I think is worth talking about, then I'll play it on the show.
Now, what do your parents think about you doing the show?
They're sort of neutral about it. They think I spend too much time on the computer, but I think they like the show, and recently I was in my local paper about the Teen Podcasters Network and the podcast, and I think they're starting to realize that it's a good thing and that I'm sort of on the wave of new technology, which is always good.
What grade are you in high school?
I'm a freshman, first year in the high school.
What are some of the things that listeners can look forward to on upcoming shows of yours?
They can always expect something that's going to benefit your brain. You know, I keep you updated with, issues in the world, and I think that it's good to know what's going on and to just talk about it. And we're sort of a two-way road at my podcast. You can submit comments and stuff, so basically it's everybody's discussion.
You mentioned that you have a crappy Dell. What other hardware do you have for your setup?
I have a pretty crappy $15 mic. I don't really pride myself on quality. Personally, I think if the content is good and it's listenable, then it's a good podcast.
Some would argue, though, that was true when podcasting started. I'll play devil's advocate. I hear a lot of people saying, well, now that there's 15,000 podcasts, you have to get your audio quality. Now, that said, your audio quality on your show is fine. But there's some that I listen to that they sound like they're in a tin can, or they sound like how my show sounded when I started. My show would never have taken off today in this environment with so many other podcasts.
I think we haven't reached that carrying capacity yet where you have to have great quality. Once that date happens, there's going to be a lot of changes in podcasting. And another reason for my better quality is that I'm not talking with other people directly. Sure, if I have voicemails, but it's not direct. And if you have a podcast where there's multiple people on
Yeah, and I agree. If you have multiple people on Skype, recording Skype conversations is a lot more difficult than just recording one person in a microphone onto your computer. That was what took me 40 shows to work out the sound issue with.
Sure, if I breathe heavily or something, then I can fix that, but just breathing heavily occasionally or saying is not as bad in audio quality as being on Skype, because to fix being on Skype you need, if you want to get just as good quality as you would if it was just you, you'd need, a mixer and just a superior audio tools.
Here's what I say to people. My recommendation is you go and you listen to your show after you record it, and you count your ums and uhs. If you're saying and more than 10 times in 10 minutes or 20 minutes, then you definitely need to go back and edit them out. Too many people will all they'll remember is and and they won't remember what you were actually talking about. When I'm done with this interview, I will have edited out all our ums and uhs.
Yeah, I think that from the very first episode, I had so many ums and ahs that it was just terrible to listen to. But now I've become more controlled, and I think you need time and experience to get better at not saying and ah. It's a bad habit to break. And sure, I still say it occasionally, and I don't go back and edit it as much. Sure, I'll take out a couple, but don't think that I have as many as I did when I first started.
Like I said, I just tell people when they ask what they should do to help on their shows. Even myself, I edit out all my ums and uhs because I do quite a few of them. And uhs, ahs, and you knows. It doesn't even have to be about experience level. It's just some people you're never going to get the uhs and the ums out of. It's just how you talk. You've talked that way your whole life, and that's what's beauty of podcasting. It's time shifted, and at any point in time you can go back and you can edit them out before you release them to your audience.
But a problem with editing uhs and ahs that most podcasters have to watch out for if they're editing is after you say or ah, you're breathing, and because you've let out air, you have to watch how much breath you take out, or if you don't take any breath out at all, it's unnecessary breath. It's like breathing extra time when you didn't need to breathe. My
thing is, when you edit out uhs and ums, don't just clip it out and have a dead spot. Clip it, contract. Clip it, contract. So in other words, you're taking it out and then pulling the file together. You're tightening it up.
You need to take a tight cut. If you take out ums and ahs, you need to take out the extra breath. And that took me like 8 or 10 episodes to figure out. And once I did that, I feel that my podcast was mildly better, but it's still much nicer to not have to listen to all that.
What software are you using to do your editing?
I have Audacity and Propaganda. I switch between them. I like Audacity's tools better than Propaganda, but Audacity, it looks like Windows 98, so...
How long does it take you to do your show today? How long does it take you to think it up, record it, edit it, and post it?
I would say anywhere from 2 hours to 4 hours. It depends on the day. If I'm going quick, because I outline my show beforehand, that's the majority of it. And then if my feed is giving me problems, then I have to fix that. But it's getting faster all the time.
Outside of the podcasting community, what are you doing to promote your show?
The biggest thing that I've done to date is I emailed my local newspaper and I said, listen, I founded the Teen Podcasters Network and I'm riding the wave of this new technology. Do you want to write an article about me? And after they wrote that article, people have come up to me and said, I listen to your podcast, is cool. And then another broader paper has since contacted me and said, we'd like to do an article about you. And I'm hoping that'll lead to a larger newspaper to pick it up.
Do you have any plans in the future of trying to generate revenue for your show? Or is this purely a love?
It's definitely a love, and I think it would be hard to find a sponsor for a philosophy show because it'd be a weird product. And I think that if I was to make any money from podcasting in general, it would come from either the TPN, which is doubtful because we're a nonprofit, or if I was asked to host a show for money.
Have you listened to any other philosophy-type podcasts, like Aware Tech or anything like that?
No, I haven't. I've never heard of WearTech. I'll have to download that. I'd love to, get in touch with other philosophy podcasts, definitely. If you've heard of godcast.org, I don't want to be affiliated with, like, a religious podcast, but they're more spiritual, and I don't want to be spiritual.
Last question I like to ask is, what advice would you like to offer, and in this case, what advice would you like to offer to other teenagers looking at starting a podcast?
I would say the biggest thing that you have to do is some advice that I've heard came from you originally, is you have to wait 5, 6, maybe even 10 shows before you start publicizing your podcast. I recently started an anonymous podcast that I'm hoping will get popular, and then I can say who it is because the suspense will build. It's not like offensive or anything, but it's about 7th episode now, and I'm just starting to add myself to the directories now, and I think that was a big mistake that I made because my first 4 shows were just crappy.
Nobody likes their first few shows. Nobody.
No.
So, I'll say it over and over and over. Don't promote your show until you get to your 5th show, no matter how good you think you are.
This anonymous podcast, it's not just a talk show. I have to do a supreme amount of extra editing. It's not just taking out uhs or ahs or making the sound levels better. I have to make significant changes to the voices to make it sound good. So I've had to work on my editing skills, and now it's better. So now is when I want to release it to the directory.
Michael, any other things about the Teen Podcaster Network or your own podcast that you'd like to talk about?
I don't want to say anything about the Counter to the World, but definitely please go check out the Teen Podcasters Network. It's teen programming, it's definitely interesting, and you need everyone in the podcasting community who's not a teen needs to realize that not just adults can do it, that the younger generation can do it too. Michael, thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate having you. Thank you. Okay. Well, Michael, thank you so much for coming on the show. And everyone out there, please check out Michael's podcast at commonercast.blogspot.com. And also check out the Teen Podcasters Network at teenpodcasters.com. Coming up at the end of today's show, we're going to have a promo from Luke from the Game Addict Hotline podcast. And then following that, we'll have some feedback from Chad with regards to the SG Show interview. So please stick around to hear all that. On our next show, we'll be interviewing none other than the Queen of Bloat herself, Madge Weinstein. So please come back for that show, Saturday, December 10th.
Don't forget, this show is always a sounding board for you, so if you have any rants or comments with regards to podcasting or tech tips, please send them to podcast411@gmail.com, or if you're at your cell phone right now, give us a call at 206-666-HELP. That's 206-666-4357. Well, that's going to do it for us today. As always, I'm your host, Rob, from Podcast 411, reminding you to listen different.
Guess what? I got a fever. And the only prescription is more
Game Addict Hotline.
Hey, do you know the name of this game? Well, if you do, you probably should be listening to the Game Addict Hotline at www.gameaddicthotline.com. That's where you can listen to all the latest gaming news for the week, listen to what's coming up next week, and we also have trivia for you from all different consoles. So check us out at www.gameaddicthotline.com. And oh, by the way, this is Double Dragon for the NES. Hope to see you there.
Hey Rob, it's Chad from podcastrant.com. Just listened to 105, your interview with the SG show, Steve and Sam. And I just want to congratulate you on one of the funniest moments in podcasting. I don't know if everybody would think it's one of the funniest moments, but I think fathers will, when you were trying to explain what your logo was, the meaning of your logo, to Sam. And he said it made no sense, and then you kept trying to explain it, and he said, whatever. Only a kid can get away with being that honest. And, well, only a kid can get away with being that honest. So, great show, and I'll talk to you later. See ya.